Right, well, good evening and welcome. I think amazingly, John, we're on show 24, aren't we? I'm Simon Lovesey, founder of Restart Sailing, joined by John Emmett.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah,
Yeah,
let's keep going.
getting quite exciting, isn't it? So, amazingly, it's 3 stages, although I think we've moved to 4 stages, but we'll come on to that in a minute. But I think it's amazing how these 3 stages have remained robust over the last year, isn't it, John?
Yeah, I think 3 stages is a very good way of thinking about it, and we don't get confused between that and the steps.
Yeah.
But we have a very special guest on later, so we'll move to that in due course.
Yeah. But okay. So I think bring us up to date, John. I think
Yeah, it's sad news, but perhaps not unexpected that the Yare Regatta, I call it that because my French isn't very good, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, has been cancelled, and that included, World and European Championships and the European Olympic qualifier, and they did absolutely everything they can to host the event. They spread it out over a large number of weeks, and now these regattas, they're all looking for alternative dates and venues. So it's still a time of great uncertainty.
getting busy, and even in the UK, I saw the Handball Winter Series had been cancelled. Although I thought that'd finish, but I think they were going to try and run it a bit later, weren't they? So we're certainly seeing things move back even beyond March, which we'll come on to in a minute.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of postponement or venue change rather than outright cancellation. But it's a very difficult time to be a regatta organizer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and the busy summer.
well, busy second half maybe, but we'll come to that later.
Yeah.
So the graph we have now is about the new daily cases in Japan, and I thought this was pretty clear. You can see the second wave started in June 2020. It looks quite small just because of the amount of testing, but you could actually see that would have peaked. That second wave would have peaked right when the Olympic Games were. So yeah, for anybody who was wondering why they made the decision when they did, it was pretty clear. And I think now most countries have a lot of testing, so the numbers, they make a little bit more sense. The good news is if you look at the third wave in Japan, the numbers are far down from that. And I think as long as things continue, so social distancing, mask wearing, the predicted new cases in Japan looks like it's going down and down. And I do think it's a possibility that we'll have an Olympic Games. I mean, I think it's very easy for people to feel a bit disappointed that perhaps if you had an earlier lockdown, then we would have had a earlier open up and perhaps spent less time in lockdown. But the situation is what it is. We are where we are now. And I think that these measures, the social distancing and wearing masks, that's what's going to keep us on track. And the next big one will be to look at the effect of opening up the schools. We know that the vaccine's been really effective. By that, I mean a single dose has been really effective. There's quite a few papers which are going to come out to support that. And one of the things I saw recently, I take as quite a positive thing, that they extended the furlough scheme to September. And I just think in September things are going to, be looking very, very different.
Yeah.
But it's very different depending upon your countries. So we have Rob Cage from ILCA, the ILCA class, coming on in a few weeks' time, and I was going to talk about Bulgaria because that's the next big event for that class, and I think maybe the Europeans is another event which is 50-50. So we have to see how that goes.
Yes, it is surprising, and obviously, yes, schools have already started going back. Because I think in Wales that they're already back, but we go back in England next week. It does make it a bit confusing, all these different variants.
Yeah, well, the scientists are saying, there's a sort of 4-week lag to see the effect of any particular measure. So the worrying thing, for example, in Bulgaria is the numbers are already going up and they're starting to open up. So the situation in April could be quite worrying. Whereas in the UK, the numbers have been going down very fast. So it does feel appropriate, especially given the vaccine rollout, which I think we're very lucky to be in the UK from that standpoint.
Yeah, that's working really well. Waiting for my call up, hopefully soon. And obviously the Restart Sailing Group, again, busy. It seems to sort of go quiet and then go busy. I think the last
Well,
few days.
just another flurry of news.
That's right, and I think now time to bring in Ian Walker. I think in terms of looking.
It's quite nuanced, the various steps. So there's probably no better man to explain it than Ian.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's easier to maybe sort of put questions my way, but I mean, I think one of the challenges the government has had is when they haven't given a roadmap, when they've basically made a decision on a Sunday with Boris on the telly and then tried to sort of bring it in by law on the Wednesday, it's led to this sort of massive scramble to try and understand it, for the weekend, which has created challenges. And so they've been under huge pressure to sort of give this roadmap of the way out. And now, of course, we've got the other problem where everybody's desperate to plan ahead based around a roadmap. And want to know all the answers sort of 2 months in advance, which are impossible to give. And I think if there's one thing I would kind of implore people to do is we have to try and remain patient. By all means, we should plan the events, but we've got to stay agile. We don't know what's going to happen in April, so arguing about exactly what the rules are around travel or something in 2 months' time is kind of pointless, because we just don't know what's going to happen with new variants, the impact of the vaccine, or any other factors. I mean, we weren't even talking about variants in November. That was kind of like a whole new sort of angle to it. So I think we need to be patient. I fully understand people want to make arrangements for their events. I think we should make arrangements, but we just need to bear in mind that nothing is set in stone, other than those in step one, where they've actually given us some defined dates, which is largely based around the school, what's necessary for the schools to come back.
I'm just looking at step 4. That's sort of the green light, wouldn't you say, in the 21st of June, nightclubs open. Going back to Bulgaria, they were hoping to open up on the 1st of April, which is what I thought might kill off the later Europeans.
Yeah. So Ian, I think the REA, was it today, issued the roadmap, which is good to see.
Well, I mean, there's nothing new in there, to be honest. I mean, we sketched that table out a week ago and sort of held off, hoping that we might hear something from Sport England or from DCMS. But the challenge we face is that the longer we hold off waiting to get more guarantees, then the more other people just start issuing versions of what may or may not happen. So we kind of had our hand forced slightly to publish this slightly maybe ahead of when we would have been more comfortable doing so. Having said that, there's very little in there we're just doing the same thing as either of you could do, interpreting what the government has issued in their guidance. We don't really have any more intel than that.
Is there anything particular that you would like to highlight in there? Anything that particular stands out to you, or you think people maybe misunderstand?
Well, I think when it comes to events, it's not actually about the sport-specific guidance at all. It's about travel and overnight stays. And overnight stays is understandable. I think that there's some queries. I mean, we queried ourselves with Public Health Dorset around our own accommodation block in Weymouth, whether that could be deemed to fit the hotel criteria and not the self-contained accommodation criteria. But it's clear that every accommodation unit needs to have its own entry and exit, which our block doesn't. So therefore, we are not self-contained. Despite having a bathroom, a kitchen, and a one-way system, still technically we are not. So that's fine. And you always get these slight grey areas. Travel is the big one. And I flagged that straight away on your site, which is very helpful, by the way, to sort of give people some direct access and the opportunity to discuss these things. And I think very quickly people started saying it's stay local. And to my knowledge, it doesn't say stay local. It says minimize travel, which is entirely different to stay local. It may imply that you don't travel beyond your local area, but to be honest, it's open to interpretation, and therefore we need to wait and see whether we get any further clarification. And I think people need to continue to use their own common sense and their own risk management. I mean, traveling a longer distance in your car doesn't increase your chance of catching COVID. It's about the infection rate where you are based or where the event is based, and it's about the risk with your lifestyle. Do you have kids that are at school? Do you use public transport when you go to work? Have you done foreign travel recently? Whatever the different instances, if you work from home and haven't seen anyone for 2 weeks, then there's pretty low likelihood you've got COVID. So it's just so nuanced, so complicated, and it relies on people using some common sense rather than trying to pick apart the exact wordings of the rules. And I think when it comes to travel, I doubt we'll see that in the legislation because it's so hard to, they can't write any legislation that they could possibly enforce. And that's been the area where I think the guidance has diverged most from the legislation. So we need to wait before we start having arguments about what exactly does minimize travel mean. We need to see what it says in the legislation. And my suspicion is it will say nothing in the legislation. And then it's down to your own moral compass and risk assessment.
Perfect. I think I personally fell down that rabbit hole because I remember under Tier 4, they sort of said something like stay local where possible, and it just felt like we were going back down the ladder again. But yeah, I think if people just have some think time about what's the right thing to do. But it is an emotional thing, for a lot of people. Sailing, I guess, it's a big part of their mental and physical health.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I think what we do need to remember is to date, and I'm sure I will be corrected at some side, but to date, nobody has reported to the RWA a transmission of COVID while sailing. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm not saying people aren't aware of it and it just hasn't been reported, but we have asked people to report it and we're not aware of it. We are aware of transmissions in sailing clubs related to social events, but not on the water activity. We've had no positive cases within the British sailing team since Christmas, and the cases we had were largely linked to an international event in Poland. And we've had no known transmission of COVID at WPNSA, where I'm a board member, where there's probably been the most activity of any sailing venue, I would hazard a guess, in the UK since the advent of COVID. So I think we've got reasonable confidence in the protocols that are in place, and people are changing at home, they're coming down, they're staying socially distanced, they're going sailing. There seems to be low risk whilst they're sailing, and it's worked thus far. The RWA guidance has worked, the mixed household guidance, which, let's be honest, when we wrote that, there was a part of me that was a bit nervous because we're not epidemiologists. We didn't have a huge swathe of scientific evidence to back it up. It was agreed by DCMS and their scientists, but I think we can all take a lot of confidence in that. And now we can take even more confidence that we've got a large percentage of people over 50 getting vaccinated in the high risk categories, which maybe includes some of our participants and volunteers. So I think we can take more confidence. The only real negative to counter against that really is these new variants and trying to understand the impact of the increased transmissibility, because of course we've not been running events since these new variants were known of. So we're learning all the time. I think we've been quite fortunate that the lockdowns have coincided with winter, although it's a little bit miserable. It does mean that we didn't lose the summer sailing season. We're pushing hard to get as much activity on the water as we can, and as a sport, we've been responsible enough to not take any backward steps, which is important, and to maintain the trust of government in allowing us to oversee this.
Good.
Yeah, with the variants, it's very mixed feelings because it looks alike with the transmissibility that the Kent variant's probably going to be the one that dominates the world. But yeah, I guess again that is what it is.
Yeah, and it's.
I'm no expert on variants, or because I'm way out of my depth talking about anything like that. I just want people to be able to enjoy sailing. We need to get outside. We are going to have to live with this forever, probably. So it's just a question of where's the balance lie.
Yeah, and I think it's great to see the work you're doing. Yeah.
That's very rarely at an extreme, by definition, to be balanced in the approach.
Yeah, and it depends what you read.
Right. Okay. So moving on to things happening already now. We move joined by David Valentine.
Sorry, just thank you. He's disappeared off everyone's screen, but Ian, thank you very much. I know we interrupted you. You did out. It really is appreciated because the RYA have really been good at catching or juggling the ball or whatever the expression is. It's not easy times.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and we'll just try and find our way through it. That's the best we can.
Perfect, David. Time to talk about sailing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Ian. That's it's given us a good info to get excited about the forthcoming season. So it's nice to hear from Ian on that point. But thanks for inviting me, guys.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and we're really keen to have any of the classes up. Just throw us a representative your way, and we'd love to get people on the show. There's actually an orderly queue now, so we've got up to about a month's waiting list. So,
but it's great. It's great to see what the classes are doing, aren't they? I mean, the D0, you must be one of our newest classes, aren't you?
Yeah, we probably are. I mean, a couple of boats came out at the same time. Our good friends at RS. But I chose to, and whilst I'm the dealer for the UK, I've also been a sailor and a member of the class association, the D0 Class Association, for 7 years now. Don't know where that time's gone, but I've had a great time doing it. And I think that's part of the key thing about getting out sailing. And this year's probably going to be really key, and a lot of people will get out because they've been pent up for so long.
Well, I think when you talk about the other classes, nothing like a bit of healthy competition. I actually remember it when it was called a punk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just looked at that bow shot, and people are going to laugh at me.
The boat in the first place. I saw a friend of mine, Tim Whedon's, down on at Hisk at Chichester Harbour Race Week, or Fed Week as it's lovingly known. And I just looked at that and I was like, what is that? I want one of those.
People will laugh, but if you look at that bow shot, it certainly looks a lot more like an America's Cup boat than an Ilka or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is just lovely lighting. But
people get really excited about it.
Thank you, Simon.
Look at that. And even it's not a lot of change from Dan when he designed the Punk. But it's just an exciting class to get in. It's just a rewarding boat, without giving any sales spiel away. And I'm not a salesman, so. But the guys that you sail with, and I think that's an important thing for any class that's either looking to start or struggling or looking to improve, is it's all about the sailors. And there's very few classes that I've been involved with in 52 odd years of sailing, I think, since I was 3. That'll give it away.
It's funny with the vaccine rollout. It's the first time in my life I've wished to be a bit older.
There are benefits, but I think in that time, it's all about who you sail with, and certainly with the D0 class, and hopefully with a lot of others. And if they're not, they should change to make sure that some of the top sailors will just come and help you, and either set your boat up, or they'll see something that they've seen out on the water, and they'll give you some real helping hints. And I've gone from, I think I was probably the last sailor or competitor at Calshot a few years back at one of the nationals, but then I was 8th in 2019.
So if you have another 6 years, you're going to be national champion. Is that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the maths.
You've got to look at those little tiny things too. Well, what could I be?
So David, can you tell us just a little bit about the lockdown and what's happened for the class during that time?
Yeah, so we did have our nationals planned for Largs last year, and a whole host of events all around the UK. And the biggest one, because of where it was, a lot of the events were cancelled. However, with Largs in particular, the nationals, our sponsors RSK and Tunnocks, they agreed to continue the funding and to put the event on this year instead.
Perfect.
So it's delayed it 12 months, and I think that's what you can expect from a good class.
I think you're not the only class that's done that. I think that's probably something that's worked really well. And it's a big shout out to the class.
A lot of classes have done that. Yeah, they've just sort of rolled into the next year with the same setup.
Yeah,
and it says a lot about the club as well. We've got to,
yeah,
say that's
yeah,
really, really appreciated.
yeah. The organisers at Largs and the team behind it, working with the club and the sponsors, they've worked really hard to maintain that. And I feel for any class that has struggled to either recover costs or to work with clubs where they wanted to get an event in. But it's down to the people, like always. It's down to some key people to keep pushing, keep working with it, and drive it on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
There's a few pictures of blue rigs, David. Is that a new boat? Oh.
Yeah, so the blue rigs are a smaller version, but I think about 90% people sail the grey rig, the 8.1. The blue works quite well. It's a 6.9 rig, but it just people can adjust the power on the D0 that much easier. The Cunningham, the Kicker, the Traveller, Dan Holman and Devotti, Compotec, North Sails and Rodney at Suntouched worked really hard on getting the boat just right, and the grey sail works brilliantly. So most people sail that, but you can see my goddaughter there, and also our youth ambassador. She was in the Oppies, she's now in the 420 squad, and she was loving it. It was just too much at 30 kilos, I think.
So is it the same mast, David?
It's a shortened lower mast for the blue sail, but some of the guys have found that they can just put a strop on the blue sail and use the same mast because it's quicker to drop it over. But as I say, 90%, and we have a whole mix of females and a wide range of weights. I think we weighed at the Nationals in 2019. I think the smallest sailor was 64 kilos in the top 10, and the heaviest was 105.
Wow.
The wind was about the same all through the weekend, so it wasn't it was advantageous to one or the other. It just works across the range. And again, I think that's down to Dan that designed it, and working with.
I've got to say, he was another legendary laser sailor, so I'm sure he had a lot of thoughts about how to make a boat more fun / easier to sail.
Yeah.
And do both rigs race together then, David? Is it a sort of or a scratch? Or...
You can race them together. We're aiming really, and most people do sail the grey rig all the time, and it's just easier.
Or maybe you have a 30 knot option.
Well, yeah, there is that, but we've also been out in those winds and some big waves in various places with that rig. And Yorkshire Dales is a classic. The wind that comes off there sometimes is a real howler. But then you get the people that, like myself, and I just charge backwards and forwards with this stupid grin on my face, enjoying the speed and the power out of it, and that's part of it. And we do say when you buy a D0 that unfortunately you will have a stupid grin on your face when you come off the water. And
I'm sure that keeps all the photographers super happy.
Yeah, and it just continues into the dinghy part, because if you have fun sailing and you get out and then you have fun with your mates sailing, well, what more can you ask for, to be honest?
Absolutely.
Good. Right. Okay. So moving on a bit, we had the dinghy show last week, which I guess David was at, wasn't he?
I was indeed.
Yeah.
You said you had a bumper time.
We did. We probably the best response out of all of the shows that we've been at so far. So
it worked really well, and we had the Restart Sailing stand there, and had several hundred people come, which was quite amazing. Particularly if we consider we're just dealing with clubs and classes. So I think. Big numbers and also international numbers as well, wasn't it?
I've just got to say, I'm so happy to be a sailing coach, because just 2 days of sat in front of a computer was enough for me. I really couldn't do a desk job.
That's right. We had John and I delivered 10 webinars for the tech group across the weekend, which had some good response and interaction, but it was sort of no break in between, was it?
No, that's saying. And I think probably as I get older, I think my bladder is not as good as it used to be. So top tip: don't start drinking the beer in the afternoon like you would normally at a dinghy show. I learnt that one.
But I think hats off to the REA for sort of doing it and keeping the momentum, because it's easy to lose the break, isn't it? With no physical show. And obviously also they were due to move to Farnborough as well, so there was a difference going on there. So I think great to be continued. I think the debate now is how do you make the most of it? I think there's a talk of a hybrid show. I don't know if you heard that, David, in terms of a bit of
I
both.
think that's a great idea, actually, to be honest, because a lot of people are concerned that it's a south show. We have the dinghy show that's down the south, and we have Southampton as well. And it's quite nice for people all over the UK, and we had quite a few people from all over Europe tapping into the chat rooms. And I think that would be a great way ahead. That just expands the sport and just shows why the UK and the RYA in particular are probably leading the.
Well, that's right. I mean, I think the dinghy show is unique, isn't it? No other country has such an offering. We're the only one that does it. And as you say, the chats work particularly well. I think as we discussed earlier, it's so engaging for people just to come online and ask questions, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a strange position actually, because when you're at a physical show, you can see people walk past and you can see them gazing and having a look and seeing why our boat's so nice looking, but you don't get that on the online show. But it was quite interesting when you engage with people on the chat room or just ping them a message of, hey, how's it going? What are you interested in? What do you think of the show? There was good feedback. So I think
most of the chat comments I got were about my hair, but I'm not sure what to do about that.
Yeah,
well, I don't have that problem.
What I found particularly interesting was the centralised chat, where I think you were involved in that as well. The sort of the comments were coming from all over the place, wasn't it? And a bit of lively debate going on.
Yeah, I think it's good. And what was nice as well was the chat was all open, so you could see what competitors were up to. And to John's previous comment, having competition is very healthy for everyone. So I think it's quite useful to be able to do that. And I think. To be quite honest, people were getting used to it. It's not something we've done before. I think going forward, it's something we should strongly consider.
Yeah, and perhaps as a sort of a supporting sort of act. So one thing we did launch was our national rankings with the Great British Sailing Challenge, which we had a good session with Andy Rice earlier. Thanks for John for joining.
Today's been two chats in one day. I think that's just about my limit.
Yeah. We'll get you in training, John.
I'm just a sailing coach.
So go there. So that worked well. So I think it's going to be an exciting year, as Ian said, when we start reopening. I guess in sort of late spring, early summer, and then sort of all these virtual things happening. It could be a boom time for sailing. Okay, so
I'm seem to be going back, but this is what I normally talk about at the start of the season, about reaching your peak performance. So you have a mini peak. Just to get into racing, we often have these regattas in the Canary Islands or Lanzarote. You're talking from a full-time sailor's perspective, or for your club sailor, that's probably when a lot of clubs start. And then March and April, that's when your open meetings start. And for us, it's the Princess Sophia Regatta. And then the big peak, the really big peak, is the World Championships for the year, or normally, I was going to say every 4 years. That's not quite right now. Normally, every 4 years, we have an Olympics, as opposed to after 5 years and after 3 years. So reaching this peak performance is a really important thing. And to have the big picture, I thought this was a nice little graph to show, because hopefully we will be having some sailing in June. I keep on saying it, the eternal optimist. I think we have light at the end of the tunnel in May, and hopefully we stick to the roadmap. And you need to think about things now. So I've been back in Dorset for a few weeks, and I've been trying to lose that lockdown beer belly on the old bike. And I think that's quite a good use of the time now, so that when we can go sailing, you can really grab the ball with both hands and crack on with it. I mean, it's not going to be a normal year. I think everybody knows that. But the habits which we have now, I think 2022 will be a much more normal year when we can take it forward. In fact, I said at the start of the show, I see the September furlough scheme as a very positive thing. It's not like one day the businesses are going to be closed and the next day they're going to be completely open. There's going to be gradually bringing more staff as confidence increases. So I think post-September, we should have a bumper winter series, and that's obviously something that Simon is very involved in, and no doubt David is going to be twisting arms for the Devotti D Zeros.
I don't twist arms. We just get on and sail it.
No, we welcome the D0s there. But so, John, do you think there may be an issue in terms of so much sailing happening in August? The concentration of it. No rest, that could cause some challenges, couldn't it?
I actually see it as a good thing, because I think we're going to be in competition with other sports.
Yeah.
I hope, for example, people are going to holiday locally and go sailing. But I'm a sailing enthusiast and incredibly biased. I didn't realise, how nice it was here in Weymouth until I was sort of forced to spend quite a lot of time here. Certainly in terms of travel, I think my worst case was 4 PCR tests in 5 days. And I think that, if nothing else, is enough to make people want to make people want
well,
to
I think that's been one of the big bonuses of these lockdowns, is we perhaps opened our eyes to what's on our doorstep, and do we need to keep travelling? When we possibly got it here.
Well, I think one of the things we do as full-time sailors is we have a big effort to be time efficient, because there's never enough hours before the Olympics. But I think everyone enjoys that, when you spend the largest possible percentage of your time on the water, and you keep the debriefings and the briefings short but very precise. I think everybody enjoys that, and then we can actually get on with the sailing. And I think that's something going forward, like the Zoom debrief, where we can all watch video, and a productive session and a fun session. Those things, for me, absolutely go hand in hand. I guess I'm biased, but if you're training, it should be more fun with a coach, and I would like to think it nearly always is.
Right. Okay.
So next up, we've got 2-man boats coming up, though. So slightly more problematic for people with the COVID rules. But I'm sure it's going to be another really good show. And I'm so happy. I think I've got the date and the time and everything right this time. You never know.
Yeah, number 25, 18th of March. We've got 2 weeks off, John.
Well, you say that.
Well, okay.
I'm sure there will be other things.
Other things will pop up.
Really
But great, as you say, great to have the classes on board. And I guess if any more classes want to come in and share their experiences, we welcome them to join in.
Yeah, I think we've got one more slot in April available. So speak now. It'll be lovely to talk to people in April, actually, when we've got more recent footage of people on the water. Maybe, I'm sort of hoping that my cycling around Dorset is going to help my hiking, but I guess we'll see.
And I guess some sailing, or even more imminent plans. I think plans are still a bit up in the air, talking about clubs and classes. I think they're still sort of.
Well, the only thing I have to say, and Ian is incredibly sensible to say to calm down, is these dates are a best case scenario. The earliest opportunity, but we will get there. It's just a time for patience, but you can be optimistic and patient at the same time.
Yeah, got to be. So we'll see if the school's going back next week, and then a couple of weeks to see how that's bedding in, and then hopefully we start to see some sailing, early in the new month.
Well, 4 weeks after schools, it will be abundantly clear how that went, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Fingers crossed. Well, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
Right.